Kubleyapi Baro. A warm and heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you gathered here today. A special welcome to the Honorable Chief Minister, Shri Conrad Sangma, the Chief Secretary to the Government of Meghalaya, Shri D.P. Walang, the Joint Secretary of the G20, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Srimati Eenam Gambhir, the members of Parliament and political leaders from Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, and Brazil. You've all come a long way. Thank you for being here. The dignitaries from the state of Meghalaya and other states of India, and to all the delegates who have flown in from around the world and from different parts of India to be here for this dialogue. But before we begin, I suppose many of you must have been wondering who the leopard and the bird greeting people at the lobby are, and they are here right now with us, just behind, waving. They are Mai Mai and Pakla, mascots who represent the official state animal and state bird of Meghalaya. These mascots play an important role in raising awareness on conservation and national resource management in the state. And we have a short video that will introduce Mai Mai and Pakla to you.
Mai Mai and Pakla. Who is this dynamic green duo? Taking a break from prowling dense forests, Pakla is a clouded leopard, the official state animal of Meghalaya. And our feathered friend is little Mai Mai, a hill myna and the official state bird. This quirky father-daughter duo is here to share some important information on all things related to conservation and natural resource management and more. Mai Mai and Pakla have been doing the rounds across Meghalaya as green ambassadors, educating communities about many exciting initiatives supported by the Meghalaya Basin Management Agency and its different projects and collaborations. They have become quite familiar and loved figures, especially among young children. The arboreal wonder cat and the chatty little birdie will be donning more roles in their mission to impart knowledge and awareness in communities and schools and empower future generations with the tools and understanding to drive their societies towards a bright social and economic future on the back of environmental wisdom. Coming to your neighborhood, screens and radio stations, Mai Mai and Pakla.
Mai Mai and Pakla will be around if you'd like a photo op later. To continue, as all of you must have witnessed, from just the drive from Guwahati to Shillong, nature and its abundance are in full display in Meghalaya, a place I've had the privilege to be born in and to grow up in before I moved to Delhi about a decade ago. It has it all, truly. Majestic mountains, lush green valleys, dramatic canyons, cascading waterfalls, and crystal clear rivers. Our gracious host, the government of Meghalaya, has planned a field trip on Friday where you will be able to witness this beauty firsthand. Now, Meghalaya's name translates to abode of clouds, and it definitely lives up to this reputation. The state receives some of the highest rainfall in the world, and you have come during the height of the monsoon, where an ever-present mist wraps itself around Shillong and beyond. The people of Meghalaya have a long history and culture of being at one with nature and its abundance. The iconic Living Roots bridges, which are now on the tentative UNESCO World Heritage Site list, exemplify the harmony between humans and nature in the state, showcasing the people's sustainable practices. But Meghalaya is faced with the 21st century challenge facing the entire global south of ensuring growth and prosperity for its people, but without the high emissions that powered the economic growth of the global north. It is imperative then for the government, stakeholders, and the community to work together to strike a balance between progress and environmental conservation, ensuring the well-being of future generations. And this is precisely why we have gathered this diverse group of policymakers academics, and entrepreneurs for this dialogue to discuss, to deliberate, and to come up with workable prototypes and models to achieve green growth and sustainable development. Knowledge and information sharing is key to unlocking the path towards a green transition. I am, and I am sure all of you are as well, looking forward to the discussions and the ideas that this dialogue will enrich us with over the next 2 days. Once again, I extend a very warm welcome to you all, and I'd now like to call on stage Dr. Samir Saran, Chair of the T20 Secretariat, member of the T20 India Core Group, and President of the Observer Research Foundation, to set the stage and the context for the dialogue.
Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Conrad Sangma, Honorable Chief Secretary, D.P. Walong, Ministers of the Cabinet of the Government of Meghalaya, Members of Parliament, Ambassadors, Excellencies, friends and colleagues. On behalf of the Observer Research Foundation, I am delighted to welcome you to this 2 days of discussions on an issue that is going to be perhaps the most enduring and most important conversation to host in the days ahead in the 21st century. The context of this meeting, of this gathering, is clear. There is a breach of contract between humans and planet. The partnership is broken. The ecosystems are now fragile. Weather patterns are changing. Climate is opening up. And in short, we are all in deep trouble. We need to find a new basis of coexistence. I know there are lots of colleagues from the government here, so I'm going to use a term they understand. We need a new PPP partnership, a planet and people partnership, where we sign a new contract with our ecosystem, with our ecology, with nature, and with the resources that abound here. The Prime Minister made it quite clear at the beginning of India's G20 presidency that sustainability will require a new dimension. It will require a focus on individual lifestyles, on leadership, on community action, and on mobilizations at a scale that is unprecedented. It would also need for us to rethink our social contract, our obligations, and our responsibilities. And I'm sure the Joint Secretary will address some of the aspects of the work that has happened on this particular issue in the G20 presidency. But as far as I'm concerned, there are still 5 big questions that we need to answer together. How can our traditions, our indigenous communities, and our ancient practices infect our future? How can we ensure that we are able to preserve them, conserve them, upgrade them, modernize them, and make them fit for the 21st century? How do we create a hybrid existence where we preserve biodiversity and nature not because of any ethical or moral reason alone, but because there is an economic and political rationale for it? How can we mobilize youngsters who are so enamored by unicorns and startups and technology industries? How can we mobilize those youngsters to focus on these new and old areas of human endeavor? Can this become an exciting entrepreneurial and industrial domain? Preserving nature, can this be the new business model that we embrace? And how can we unleash the power of a plural democratic country like India, where states like Meghalaya do not wait for cues, but set the norms and parameters of behavior and lead India's future through their own actions? And they become the examples and exemplars of global mobilization and global consensus. But most importantly, how can we use one of India's greatest gifts, a state like Meghalaya, to create a global hub for climate action, where radical green technologies, traditional cultures and choices and international finance and technology come together to serve the millions, hundreds of millions who depend on the Himalayan ecosystem, on the rivers that flow through this very dynamic region, and can we build this 400 million strong community of co-travelers who can work together. Now, Meghalaya has a permanent ambassador in New Delhi, my colleague Letitia Varjari. And whenever I throw a problem at her, she tells me Meghalaya is the answer. I decided that it is time that we bet on Letitia and bet on Meghalaya, and I have 3 ideas to share with you as we look ahead. Let this not be a conversation that is restricted to the G20 and the year of India's presidency. Let this be the beginning. And Mr. Chief Minister, I'm using your presence here to suggest that let this be the first of an annual gathering of experts who come together to discuss green futures, green financing, adaptation, resilience, farming, productivity, and let Meghalaya become the equivalent of the Davos of our green future, where indigenous cultures, communities, tribes, peoples, customs, culture, all fuse with the ecosystems and ecology and natural endowments that abound here. And can we make this the first in the series of international thinking, international action? Can we bring the startups who are working on green technologies to Meghalaya every year to share their experiences and journeys? Can we bring investors who are investing in new technologies to Meghalaya every year under the same platform? Can Meghalaya be the platform state that will change and usher in a new era of green future thinking? And that is something that we should all think about as we gather here for the next 2 days. Let this be the first and not just a stop in the journey of India's presidency. Let this be the beginning of a new journey of our green future. Second, we all are aware that any transition and any change that happens going ahead has to be women-led. And Meghalaya is perhaps one of the few locations in India which demonstrably can lead this ideal and aspiration of women-led transitions where women design, women participate, women create value and valuations through this transition. And can we put women and communities at the center of growth and not chase the big industry or the big market capitalizations, but let's celebrate the boutique and the niche as we create value for everyone. On this note, please look at the exhibitions we have put outside. The government of Meghalaya has created special booths. Please have a look at them, and that might give you some inspiration of creating new scale industries that both lift and help in inclusive growth that is sustainable and indeed climate friendly. And finally, and this is something for all of us to think about, can we agree on 5, 6, a handful of strong ideas that we should convey to Madam Eenam Gambhir and to the G20 Sherpa and to the Secretariat on issues that we believe must be taken to the Leaders Summit? So my third and final proposition for all of you is that can we come out with a Meghalaya declaration where we submit to the Secretariat 10 big ideas that the Sherpa track must consider and must be agitated. And I think this is a simple task for over the next 2 days for all of you to do. But let me thank you once again for joining us. Let me thank the government of Meghalaya, the Chief Minister, the Chief Secretary, Sampatji, who has been a co-traveler on this journey for a few months. We all at ORF are committed to Meghalaya. We are, as I was mentioning, already in love with your state. We have a permanent presence in our office. And we hope this is truly the beginning of a long and fruitful journey together for ORF, for the state of Meghalaya, and for all who are gathered here. Thank you once again, and thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Dr. Saran, for giving us a good sense of what to expect, not just over the next 2 days, but hopefully over the next few years. I'd now like to call upon the Joint Secretary of the G20, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Srimati Eenam Gambhir, to give us her keynote address.
Thank you very much to the organizers of this event, to ORF, Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Conrad Sangma, Honorable Chief Secretary, Mr. D.P. Balang, and all the officials and other delegates that are present here. I'm sure, just like me, you're very happy to be in this beautiful state of Meghalaya. I wish to truly thank the government of Meghalaya for hosting this very important meeting and for giving us this opportunity to showcase the beauty and the wisdom of this land to the G20 delegates and the world through them. I wish to thank specifically the Honorable Chief Minister for your leadership, sir, and the Chief Secretary for all the support offered to the Secretariat for putting this event together. Excellencies, colleagues, the topic of today's discussion, Nature Solves a New Framework for Sustainable Future, is indeed tied to one of the most significant priority areas of the Indian presidency, which is the lifestyle for environment, also known as the short version of it, LIFE. Before I expand on this thought, let me just say, what a better place to see life in action than the abode of clouds, the state of Meghalaya. When you arrived, colleagues, excellencies, you must have seen a beautiful gift box from the state of Meghalaya in your rooms, which had beautiful and exotic teas and spices. If you speak to the local people, they'll tell you that these are also medicine. The people of the state will give you multiple ways to use these products and many others that they have, which they use in their daily life, as here, food is also considered medicine. This and many other solutions that you might see during your stay in Shillong will help you reflect on the intimate connection that the people that stay in this beautiful state have with the nature around them. Let's spin this thought for now, as I would like to come back to it after speaking of the context in which we are holding our discussions today, and the links that it has with the wisdom of Meghalaya, its land, and the lifestyle that people have in this beautiful state. Excellencies, colleagues, for many of you who have been following the international events for some years more closely, it is apparent that the world, while facing the many unprecedented and interlocking crises, is also going through multiple transitions, willingly or unwillingly, which stand to fundamentally alter our societies. Moreover, the multiple challenges of climate, biodiversity, ecosystem fragilities, development, debt vulnerabilities, economic fragilities the world faces have exacerbated the problems for many developing countries around the world who today face the unprecedented constraints and challenges with competing priorities and limited fiscal space. Many are finding it harder to recover economically from the poly-crisis we are confronted with. Unfortunately, for many around, this has meant that investments in the Sustainable Development Goals are no longer a priority. Countries not only face disproportionately large needs for building climate resilience, but also the imperative to modernize and accelerate growth without carbonizing, while managing disruptions in the global supply chains, market volatilities, and lifting people out of poverty all at the same time. In many ways, this situation is truly unprecedented, as no country in the history of the world has ever done all of this at once. And we live in extraordinary times, and therefore we need extraordinary solutions. In the backdrop of these multiple and interlinked crises, India took over the presidency in December 2022. And immediately after taking over the presidency, Prime Minister Modi convened the first ever Voice of Global South Summit to listen firsthand to the problems as well as the solutions that the developing world needs from influential forums like the G20. During this summit, we debated many issues and asked several questions. Leaders debated about the actions that the international community is taking about these crises and wondered if our past actions led us to where we are. Are we repeating more of the same? Or is there a new thinking, a new paradigm guiding us? How are we doing what we are doing? And are we involving all stakeholders as we do so? What are the parameters of success? Is anyone being left behind in our efforts? And are we crafting and creating any spillovers from our actions which are affecting people outside our borders? And if it is true that we may be repeating our old patterns, what do we need to reimagine to deliver on our problems while not creating the same challenges that we have today? Excellencies, colleagues, what followed was a very fundamental discussion between leaders about the state of affairs and the solutions we need. The leaders of the developing world were very clear that the climate crisis today is the result of an old and outdated development approach that disregarded the environment. For decades, countries have developed while disregarding the environment and ignored the consequences of their actions on nature and non-human life. As the development models of the past were based on trade-offs with the environment, the measures of growth and prosperity, for example, the GDP, also came to exclude the cost of our actions to the environment. Consequently, the growth models, economic approaches, international support available and suggested to countries were in many cases based on fueling consumption. It may appear that there are almost non-existent alternatives to this model and near-absent international support system for an enabling environment for alternative approaches. In this scenario, and as a developing country which has strong development aspirations, India has put forward a visionary idea of anchoring our actions, our consumption at the individual level through the lifestyle for environment, the life approach. India's priority on life epitomizes the theme of the Indian presidency, one earth, one family, one future, like no other concept. And it's also an urgent call to action because it requires us to see us, the collective us, as one earth and calls upon us to demonstrate solidarity for those in need, including the non-humans. Truly leave no one behind, mobilize resources and direct our efforts where they're needed most. It calls us to act as one family and to break all silos and work on our connections, relationships with each other as communities, societies, nations, and more importantly, with nature. It calls upon us to integrate our approaches, build systems that leverage synergies rather than benefit from trade-offs. It inspires us to work for our one future and keep the aspirations of our young people at the center of our actions. It implores us to act in a manner which does not and will not put their survival in danger. Excellencies, colleagues, we have come a long way since 2021 when the Prime Minister announced the idea of life, the lifestyle for environment at the Glasgow Summit. And last month, G20 made this idea its own by adopting the key and very ambitious high-level principles to take forward this idea. And yet, as we work to mobilize support and galvanize G20 consensus on these principles, we became very aware that we are barely scratching the surface of what really needs to be done to address the challenges that lie ahead of us. As the world builds towards a sustainable future where decarbonization is inevitable, we would need to prepare and mainstream development models based on synergies rather than trade-offs with the environment. To deliver this, we would urgently need to reimagine old paradigms. And in that journey going forward, solutions such as those we see in this beautiful state of Meghalaya are rooted in a grounded relationship with nature. They are fundamental for us. Excellencies, colleagues, the high-level principles on lifestyles adopted by the G20 development ministers, while providing a blueprint of achieving our climate and development goals in an interconnected manner, also deeply support and acknowledge the role of traditional communities and local practices for sustainable consumption and production. And this brings us back to the thought that we began the discussion with. For the people of Meghalaya and other such traditional communities in India and around the world, life, that is lifestyle for environment, is the way of life for not only individuals, but also for their economies, their policymakers, and the societies. Meghalaya has long championed the idea of a holistic economy which recognizes the value of nature and preserving environment. The complex web of community actions, government policies, as well as multi-stakeholder partnerships like the growth model of Meghalaya present one of the leading examples of growth strategies needed to build a sustainable future. For communities in this land, nature-based solutions do not just mean planting more trees which absorb excess carbon from the atmosphere. It means living in harmony with nature while having an intimate relationship with it in all aspects of their lives. If we speak, for example, of the recent discoveries of science about the intricate relationship between the mind and body and the complex ways in which the various organ systems within the human body speak to each other, the very complex interlay of systems communicating not only internally but as well as with our external surroundings, we will realize that traditional healing communities in our societies have always known about this relationship and have acted and healed based on these principles and natural laws. It is widely considered in these societies that the cause of a disease is the imbalance and relationship between mind and body at the individual level and between humans and nature at the global level. It is crucial that balance and harmony rooted in the understanding of our interconnectedness form the basis of this crucial relationship with nature that we need to restore. Just like any other relationship, it is clear that there is a lot that we need to relearn and reimagine to find solutions for our big global problems. Most important amongst these tasks here is to scale up the local frameworks, platforms, and solutions that our communities have always known and make them mainstream in our global policy discourse and mainstay of our global agendas. Therefore, what we want is not only for the world to come to Meghalaya, but also for Meghalaya to showcase to the world what its communities have always known about living in harmony with nature. And I'm very confident that through this event and the work beyond, the young people of this beautiful land, under the leadership that it has, are ready to take on that responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for so eloquently framing the G20 agenda in the context of this dialogue, for driving that agenda, for your leadership, and for gracing us with your presence here at this dialogue. I'd now like to call upon the Chief Secretary to the Government of Meghalaya, DP Walang, to please give us his keynote address.
Thank you, Letitia. Very good morning to all of you. Our Honorable Chief Minister, Shri Conrad K. Sangma, the ORF President, Dr. Samir Saran, Joint Secretary, Madam Eenam Gambhir, Principal Secretary of the Government of Meghalaya, Sampat Kumar, our DGP who is present here, Shri L.R. Bishnoi, the Excellencies, ambassadors from different countries who are here, delegates from different states of the country as well as from outside the country, members of the press, a very good morning and welcome to all of you to this very important event. Thank you to ORF for partnering with MBMA to organize this event in Shillong, and I'm sure all of us will benefit greatly from this event. I'm one of the 3.8 million concerned citizens of the state. I stand here not only as the Chief Secretary of the state, but also as a concerned citizen. I'm concerned because today, as we sit here, we are sitting amidst one of the richest biodiversity hotspots in the world. We are sitting in a place with the highest rainfall in the world, the most friendly temperature all year round, a state with very low carbon emissions, a state with the cleanest village in Asia, one of the cleanest river in the country, and also a state which is predominantly tribal and matrilineal in nature, but lately bearing the brunt of climate change. We are witnessing flash floods with disturbing regularity. We are witnessing landslides and at unexpected places, and also experiencing annoyingly high temperatures at times in the state. Climate change is not fiction. Climate change is a reality, and events that accelerate climate change are witnessed on a day-to-day basis. It is not a mere rhetoric or a hysteria. It is staring at us right in the face, and it is one of the biggest threats to our fragile ecosystem. an ecosystem in our state that is managed by local communities through community engagement. We are all witness and will be witnessing, for those who have come from outside, the sacred groves in Meghalaya. You'll be, I'm sure, visiting some of them. These are all testimony of the community engagement and efforts made by the local community towards a better ecosystem. Being on the wrong side of the 50s, I'll narrate just two incidents to prove and to exemplify what climate change is all about. I remember about 35 to 40 years back, during winter vacations, we would go to our village, which is on the southern slopes of Meghalaya. That is beyond Mausanram, and we have to trek and walk for about 2.5 to 3 hours. A very treacherous route, difficult terrain. When we reach our village, we'll always be welcomed with oranges. When you sleep in our bedroom, oranges all over the room, on the roof, on the floor, everywhere. That was just 40 years back. We would not be throwing paper rockets or throwing stones at each other. We would be throwing oranges at one another. Such was the plenitude of oranges in that place, just 40 years back. Last winter, I went to my village, and when I was looking for an orange for my cousin, I said, I want to have some local oranges. He had to go to the shop to buy an orange. So that is the change that has happened in the last 35 to 40 years. You ask the local farmers with the traditional wisdom, they'll say only one thing: the soil has changed. The climate has changed. The weather is not the same anymore. The humidity has changed. Therefore, we don't have any more oranges. Very sad, but it's a reality. It's not rhetoric, as I mentioned. Second, again about 35 to 40 years back, I remember Rotary Club. Some of you are Rotarians over here. Rotary Club arranged a walkathon. Here in Shillong City, we had to walk from Shillong to Barapani, and we get these certificates that we participated. Very exciting for all of us. Then the evening, they ended the program with a sort of a lottery, lucky dip. They had a lottery system. That was in State Central Library. And I remember I went there with my dad. So the third prize, fourth prize, everything was very exciting. Second prize was very nice, a stereo system. We had a turntables at that point of time. And the first prize, I asked him, what is this first prize? I've never heard about this. I was a young boy, of course. He said, this is a refrigerator. The first prize was a refrigerator. I said, what does it do, the refrigerator? He said, this is where you keep your food and all that. I said, but we always keep our food in a traditional dooli, we call it, at home. We have a dooli, which is sort of a wooden structure with a netting in front to let in air. He said, this will replace the dooli. Of course, we didn't have words like climate change at a point of time, but it was an indication that things were changing. From the transformation from a traditional dooli to a refrigerator is one step which shows that the climate pattern is changing and has begun to change. That was 35 to 40 years back. So today, I don't think so there is any Khasi household in Shillong town, very few perhaps, who have and still have a dooli, but everybody has got a refrigerator. Same is the case with an office space. We never used to have fans in the office. Now we not only have fans, we have fancy ACs. So a lot of transformation has changed in the last 30 to 40 years. So the question is, well, you are a person from the government. You're narrating all these incidents. Yes, they are true. So what is the government doing about it? Under the leadership of our Chief Minister, of course, you'll be keen to know that in the last 5.5 years, a lot of steps have been taken to combat and to at least try to balance out, as Dr. Samir was saying, this, breach of contract, a very interesting concept, a breach of contract between nature and human. One of the interesting initiatives taken is the PES, Payment for Ecosystem Services. Payment for Ecosystem Services, I think so it's very unique. It's done only in the state of Meghalaya, in which there is a process of carbon sequestration and which we have targeted about 50,000 hectares all over the state, already completed plantation in about 17,000 hectares. So we are hoping that at least the local communities, this is not done by the government, it's done in partnership with the local communities. I'm sure that eventually 50,000 will escalate to much more, leading to a lot of greenery and plantation in the state. 50,000 is the initial target that we are talking about. And this payment for ecosystem services is a system in which the government encourages the local community to participate in plantations. This is happening, and it has already started. 17,000 hectares has been put in place, and I'm sure that the balance will also be completed very soon. We also have a very interesting concept of forest management plan in which already about 1,000 villages, separate from PES, have participated, in which there is a lot of plantation, there is a lot of reforestation taking place all over the rural areas. Because we are concerned, we have seen, we are talking about deforestation, we are talking about the negative impact, but these steps will, I hope, will balance out what we have just discussed. Then we are aware that 70% of the population in Meghalaya comprises of the youth. Therefore, we have to get the youth also engaged. Therefore, the VCF, the village community facilitators, are also there in the state, in which 6,500 of them have already been appointed. These are the young boys and girls who will basically help the local communities to ensure that the environment, the ecosystem is protected, and they are the messengers of green. So these are the initiatives that we have taken. Of course, we have the Natural Center of Excellence for Natural Resource Management, which again is very unique. We have a Center of Excellence for Natural Resource Management as well as sustainable livelihoods in our state. Then other initiatives, I can go on and on, but the more important ones is that we have enacted the electric vehicle policy, the water policy, seeing the convergence of the three major departments of soil and water conservation, water resources, and the public health engineering. So, have we done enough? That will be the obvious question, because these are the steps that we have taken, but have we done enough? I feel that we have made a decent start, but we still have to go a long, long way. It has to be a sustained effort, it has to be a continuous effort, and I'm sure that with an event like this, where more minds will pool together and give us ideas how to take things forward, I'm sure that we'll have a better future to hand to the future generation. We have to focus on climate change resilience, sustainable resource management. We have to focus on water resource conservation. We have also mapped about 60,000 plus springs. You may say, what's the big deal? 60,000 springs we have mapped, what's the big deal? But the big deal is that this information, after we have mapped, is being shared with the local communities so that the local communities will know what is the status of your spring in your village or nearby village. Is it depleting? Is it the water level is still okay? Or it's going to dry up in a couple of years' time. So all this information are being shared with the local community, and I'm sure that with the sustained efforts that we're putting, with the engagement that we have with the local communities, more and more better solutions will come up in the future. Biodiversity conservation is also a very important step, and I'm sure that with the formation of the 6,500 biodiversity management committees in different villages, this will also go a long way. Sustainable tourism. Tourism, brick and mortar buildings like this is nice. This is good for MICE tourism in an urban area. But in the rural areas, we need to focus more on sustainable tourism, adopt nature-based solutions, and go along with good, walking trails, nice treks, and all that. Indigenous knowledge and practice should not be ignored. This is what we have to take care, whether it's medicinal plants, whether it is food habits. I remember when we were young, we were one of the most basic diet that we used to be given used to be millets. It's all forgotten till this year when it's declared as the International Year of the Millets. Again, we are talking about millets. But in between 30, 35 years now, nobody has talked about millets. So we have to talk about the indigenous knowledge and practice also. And last but not the least, green infrastructure and urban planning. We are shifting the administrative setup to New Shillong. I'm sure that we need to have more green space. The most important thing is that we need good green space. You go to any good capital city in the world, they have adequate green space, and I'm sure that we will take the same path and also use technology. One of the talking points, in fact, in the state today is mining. But the state has taken efforts now to ensure that we use technology, and scientific mining is on the cards, and in about 3-4 months' time, I'm sure that this will bear fruition. That will be a real game changer for the state when it comes to mining. So, a lot of things will be discussed in this forum, a lot of ideas will come. Nature solves, we have to take care of nature, and as we develop a new framework, I request the organizers, I request all those who are participating here, let's walk the talk. Whatever decisions you take, please escalate it to us so that it can be actionized, and let it not remain within the four walls of this room. We need to ensure that whatever decisions are taken, they need to be concretized, they need to be actionized, and that is the only gift we can give to our future generation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your evocative speech, reminding us that climate change may seem abstract, but it's actually very real and its consequences are vast and far-reaching. With that, I'd like to call upon the Honorable Chief Minister, Shri Conrad Sangma, to give us the inaugural address.
Shri D.P. Walang, our Chief Secretary to Government of Meghalaya, the Joint Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Madam Eenam Gambhir, Shri Samir Saran, the Chair of the T20 Secretariat, all the other officials who are present out here, members of Parliament, dignitaries, ambassadors, excellencies, our chief executive members from district councils, and all my dear friends who have come here to be part of this very, very important, and I must say, a historic moment. I first of all would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to our state, and I hope that you have a very, very pleasant and a very comfortable stay in our state of Meghalaya. And along with that, I do hope that this particular dialogue would be a beginning to many other discussions and actions to be taken up in the days and months and years to come. I was recently in Delhi. I just came back last night. And I had met one very senior person. I will refrain from taking the name. And while speaking, we were discussing about climate change. And we are all quite aware of the different situations that we are facing as humanity. And something he told me was quite something that I didn't expect would be happening so soon. But he told me that in the next 8 to 10 years, the entire Arctic will melt. And the new trade routes will change. And the routes that we take now are going to be different from the trade routes we take in the next 10 years' time. And hence it's a absolute necessity to start studying the different trade routes, because I'm told it'll reduce the distance by about 1/3. So when I heard that, that really shocked me, and I'm sure like it must have shocked a lot of you, that's going to happen. Talking of a decade and the Arctic will be gone. The Arctic will be gone. And of course, it opens up many challenges, and it also makes us look at things in a much more different way. I think I'm not a person who's here to really give a long speech on the different issues that we are facing. I think it's important that as a society, as a government, I think we need to first of all start with realizing and accepting, I think that's the correct word I would like to use, the reality of the situation. Number one, it is happening. And number two, we have to find ways to adapt and find some ways to mitigate. So therefore, the road in front of us is more or less clear. And hence, while we do so many small things which are very important because small things matter, we need to realize that at the crux of the entire problem that we face, and of course, this is my personal opinion that I'm sharing with you because I think this is a great platform to really share personal thoughts and ideas and figure out how we should move forward. And as was mentioned by so many, including our Joint Secretary from Ministry of External Affairs, that the lifestyle that we have and the consumption-driven economic policies that we have has a lot to do with how the overall climate is being impacted. And I think we are all aware of that. We always focus on GDP. And as a government, obviously, economics is important for me because we need to look at economic opportunities. We need to look at livelihood. These are very crucial aspects. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is we must realize the reality of the situation. That while we move forward, while we are working on a consumption-driven economic policy, and of course, India has been very aggressive, and so has Meghalaya been. Sometimes the target of, putting our GDP in front really sometimes blurs the other issues that are there. And therefore, as was mentioned by the Joint Secretary, that's important for us to look at it from all the angles. Can we continue to have our GDP growth the way we would want it? Can we continue to have the consumption, but at the same time, can we balance it out and push it with green economics? Can we push it with entrepreneurship that is more focused on green technology? For example, we are at a very, very crucial stage, I want to share with all of you, where as a government, for many, many years, we have faced a huge problem with power and electricity. Even now, today, we face that problem. And every time we sit and discuss this as a cabinet and as with officials, the big question mark in front of me is that we have huge deposits of coal. So why don't we start a thermal plant so that I can resolve this issue once and for all in the next 2 years? Or do I go with a decision where I say, well, let us see how we can balance it out and maybe focus on solar energy and other forms that are there, which may not be as stable as a thermal plant, but we have the entire issue of carbon emission and this entire technology shifting from coal-based thermal plants into greener energy. And hence, even decisions like these for a government at these crossroads that we are in are very, very important. And these are the decisions that we need to take at every level. So it's not just the government, even as individuals, you take those decisions at your own personal level, at the family level, at the community level. And hence, I think what is important is that we need to face the reality. We need to realize that this is real, it's happening. We need to realize that there are challenges where we need to balance between the livelihood that we need to create, because economics is important. But at the same time, while the economics is being created, how do we balance it out with green and sustainable energy, technology, designs, and policies that we need to create? So that's really where we are, and I hope that the deliberations will help us, because let's be very clear, we cannot ignore the other aspects also. So we may want to, and we may want to say that, no, you have to do this particular policy. but realizing that the practicality of things are not there for us to do it, we need to move forward. Now, our Chief Secretary was mentioning to you about the sacred groves. Now, I'll tell you a reality of what things are. I don't know how many of you have taken the walk, and I hope that maybe some of you will get a chance to walk on what we call the David Scott Trail. It's a very old economic road or a passage that used to be used by the British before India's independence to transport the products to Bangladesh, now Bangladesh. And that was a route that was used. And there is a lot of semblance of that even today. You will see the bridges that were made in the 1800s, late 1800s. They're still intact. The stones on the road. It's quite an interesting passage. But more importantly, when you go through that road, you'll realize, when you're trekking on it, it's about a 17 kilometers trek, you'll realize that that's where the sacred groves are. It starts with the sacred groves. And as you move and you go forward, you cross the river that is there, and suddenly there is no more sacred groves, and there are, well, not many trees. And there is a lot of small mines that are being mined out there in a very unscientific manner. And you will realize that why is it so that this side of the river, it's like that, and that side of the river is different. And when you go a bit deeper into things, you'll realize that there are a lot of government offices towards Maupulang area and towards the sacred groves. A large number of people are government servants. A large number of people also have, other forms of livelihood that are going on. And hence, maintaining a sacred grove somewhat becomes easier because livelihood issue has been addressed through other means. And when you cross on the other side of the river, that is not the case. The people are struggling to have their livelihood at a certain level and be comfortable. And hence, the only thing they can do is be dependent on the forest and the forest products. I think this is a really clear example of the fact and the problem that I'm trying to share with you as a government and as a chief minister, that at the end of the day, until and unless we are able to give alternatives to livelihood, until unless we cannot create parallel economies and systems, it is difficult and sometimes unfair for us to expect that people will switch in a matter of a day. Now, we had 2014 when the NGT came and they banned the unscientific mining that was going on in Meghalaya. Now, this mining has been going on for 200 years by the people in that exact same way. May not be the best and the safest for the people, but that is what was happening. And suddenly in 2014, you just come in and you say, well, this is illegal. There are lakhs of families that are dependent on this particular livelihood program. Now, I'm not trying to justify whether it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to give you a scenario. And I would presume and I would expect, and I would have looked at it from this way, that you need to allow the system to change. You need to give that option and that space for people to shift or transit into whatever is better. And hence, at the end of the day, while we look at this, and I hope this dialogue will look into that aspect, that we need to realize the reality of things, we need to keep the mindset. We need to realize that people's mindset is very important and how we're going to work through that mindset. And we need to realize that it has to be a transition that we're going to do. We can't expect things to change overnight. And that's the kind of dialogue that I hope that will take place, realizing the facts, realizing the realities, not just of Meghalaya, of the globe and of India and of Northeast as a whole. And while you do that, how do we transit into an economy that is going to be much more sustainable, not just simply give an order tomorrow and say, well, these things have to change and you cannot do this from today. And of course, we are running out of time. There's no doubt about that. But the point at the end of the day is that we need to face the reality, and it's not so pleasant and so nice, but well, that's what it is. And so I hope that this particular forum will keep all of these aspects in mind. I was happy to see the slogan or whatever, the nature solves. I personally feel that that it does, and it's absolutely right. But I think we need to allow it to solve it. You need to give the space. And so therefore, while you discuss and come out with different suggestions, I hope you go into that particular mode. Now, I'll come to the communities and why Meghalaya has been, a very, very strong believer in community-based governance and community-based society. And that has been actually one of our greatest strengths. And even today, almost all of the activities that take place at the grassroots level, the community leaders, the village leaders, they play a very, very important, crucial role. That is something that I feel is a kind of an institutional setup that we have. And it really allows us to make things happen at the grassroots level. So for example, other states, they have the panchayati system in India. We have our community-driven systems, which works equally good or maybe even better in some cases, because a form of trust is there, a form of discipline is there, a form of traditional aspect is there. And this is something that I strongly feel can be replicated in many other parts. As I said, the panchayati system is doing that, but I guess the overall aspect of tradition is missing from the panchayati system. And I feel the model of Meghalaya could be something that could slowly start coming into the system. And if we can, as we mentioned to you, we have started mapping and working with the villagers in almost everything. So starting with the village employment councils, which is of course Government of India's mandate. We have the health councils, we have the volunteers for the environment, we have volunteers for the development aspect. Today, I think Meghalaya will be one of the first states where we will actually have a volunteer in every 6,800 plus villages that we have, which means that we will be connected directly from development aspect directly to the 6,800 volunteers, who will each be given technological support, a tab or whatever technology platform. And we will be connected to the grassroots directly through a technology platform where we will integrate all of these aspects. Now, it sounds very simple and very generic, but the impact of this is huge. So tomorrow, suppose the individual person who is the, say, a beneficiary of old age pension. Our target is that, and our hope is that the old person or the senior citizen will no longer have to go to the block to get this money. We will be expecting that these volunteers will actually deliver the money and the benefits through banking correspondence, because we have increased our banking correspondence to about 1,500 of them. And I hope that we'll be having about 3,000 in a year or 2 years' time. So the volunteers, along with the banking correspondence, will ensure that our senior citizens will get the service at the doorstep. Similarly for other services also. So hence, this kind of a very strong economic and a service-driven program is coming up. So we are using this community-based system very strongly even for governance. So therefore, this is something that is something that I strongly feel that other states could replicate. And I'm sure that in our tribal society, there are many states that have that system. So I think it would be great to study the pros and cons of this and discuss in the dialogue that you have on how we can move forward in this. I have a lot more to say, but I'm sure that this is only an inaugural session, so I don't want to go too much into the details. But I would like to comment on what Mr. Samir had mentioned, and I would like to inform him, and he'll be happy to know that we are in the process. We started this process last year before the elections, before the second term started. So we had started discussing, and we had cleared a project to put up a climate change center or a center of study of excellence in Shillong. And this is already, proposal has been cleared. And we should be starting the implementation of that this year itself. And it's not about just having that center, because obviously center means nothing if it's not activated. So our idea is to do exactly what you have mentioned, that we would want an annual conference to take place in this center. We would want children, school children, college children from all over the Northeast to come to this center, stay for 2-3 days out here, experience and learn about what's happening, because as they say, even if you can't do anything much about things, at least talk about it. When you start talking, that's when you start creating that awareness and the entire inquisitiveness among the children, and that's when things start happening. So let's talk about things. So we are hoping that this particular center of excellence will allow that platform to discuss things, and we would want this to be happening as an annual event. So it's exactly what you have in mind, but we have already started the work. And as I said, that we have already sanctioned the funds for it. I expect the work to start this year. We want this to be, as I said, a center where children can come, where conferences can happen, discussions can happen, and this could be a place where year-long different activities could take place. And I have always been a very strong proponent of the idea that the Northeast needs to look at 2-3 things together, and we can't segregate ourselves from it. And definitely one is climate change. So therefore, there's no boundary of states for climate change. We are in a very, very sensitive environment this environment zone that is there. And hence, all the states of the Northeast are affected in one way or the other. So therefore, we need to come out with certain policies and steps together and decide. And therefore, our idea was that we should have at least a regional Northeast conference along with other countries, like Bangladesh and Burma and Myanmar and Bhutan especially, who are within that zone and that certain square kilometers that will affect this entire area. So this should be an annual thing. And so environment-related issues need to be discussed together. And the entire aspect of Act East policy, so it means trades and economic, that also needs to be brought into the agenda, because that is what is affecting and driving the entire impact on the environment. So these two things need to be connected. And if we are going to talk as a Northeast region and with other countries around the region, then we need to ensure that it has to be complete. And hence, trade, economics, and the environment should be discussed together, and how we can move forward, as I said, as a country, as a state and a region that is going to be driven with sustainable technology, with sustainable inputs, methods. I keep talking to a lot of people that today the world is really moving fast in terms of different processes that are available. I keep telling people about aspects about regenerative farming. It is something that we really need to look into, and as an aspect which has not been given that much of importance, but it is something that we need to really study. And this is again, the question comes in. Again, I'm not giving my opinion in this, but an area which you need to study. That there's a traditional form of shifting cultivation better maybe environmentally, may not be from the fact of cutting the trees, but the fact that every time you till the land, then you are emitting those CO2s from the soil itself. And hence, if you allow the soil to regenerate and recover after 1 or 2 cycles of farming, and you shift, somewhere can there be a hybrid model of farming that could balance out both these aspects? I think these are very important things. We just simply think because we cut off the branches of the trees, we think that, you're destroying the environment. But we're not realizing that the modern techniques of farming is destroying the environment more than the traditional way of farming used to. And I think these are areas which I think one needs to study. And therefore, Northeast, I don't talk of Meghalaya because Meghalaya is important. Obviously, it's our state. But I think you need to really look at the entire region. The region has a lot of things to offer. This is almost like a continent on its own, with 200 different tribes and languages, where even one village from another village doesn't even understand the language that the other village speaks. That's how the diversity is. and they have their own ways and means of doing things. I think it's important that what has worked for the past 200, 300, 400 years, I'm sure that there is something hidden in those practices that could be of great use to the entire world. And I think this is an excellent platform to really look into all of that, examine it, and see how we can take it forward. So, well, I have run out of points now, so, and you're lucky. So I once again would like to thank all of you for coming here. And this is a subject I tell everybody is really close to my heart. And I really am there to ensure that we can do things that was going to change things. I was just in the International Solar Mission headquarters in Gurugram just day before yesterday. And I was telling them that I'm exactly at this crossroads of thermal power and solar power and trying to figure out. Luckily for us, the demand and the requirement is not as high as bigger states. So maybe there are technologies which we could look at which could somehow give us the necessary power that we need. And so therefore, I'm just going to share, we'll be officially announcing it soon. So in about 2-3 weeks' time, we are coming out with a very large mission called a CM Solar Mission, where we would like to put individual solar units which are backed with batteries and inverters in the individual houses. This would be at rural level and at urban level and even for institutions. And the idea really is to touch about close to 100 to 200 megawatts of installation in the next 5 years' time. This is decentralized model. And as I said, government of Meghalaya alone on an annual basis is working towards investing minimum of about 80 to 100 crores on this project every year. So which means in the next 5 years, we expect more. And really, I would appeal through the people out here. I know you have a very strong network, and I would like to pitch it right here that help us make the right decision of not going for thermal. If we can work together and figure out a way where we could provide clean energy, and some of you can partner with us. We're not asking that the CSR has to be given to the state. If people want to adopt villages, we'll be happy. And if there are models that can be worked out, please share with us. You're lucky that Mr. Zoram where's Mr. Zoram? Yeah, he's our nodal officer for G20, and he's also the MD for the for the renewable energy division also. So he's the right man to actually be in touch. But we'll be launching this program very soon, and I hope that this will be a very, very big game changer. I know that the battery technology keeps changing, but I don't think we can wait for that to happen. Let us start somewhere and move forward. And I hope that in this also, Meghalaya can show a way and lead. And we are targeting, as I said, that we have about 6 lakh plus households in the state. We expect to touch at least about close to about 1 lakh households within this next 5 years is the target we have, which is not really large, but obviously financial constraints are there. But with the support from all of you and with all your ideas and contributions that we can make, I'm sure that this could be one of the really successful programs that we are planning to have. And we're not doing it just like that. We have tried and tested this in the last 5 years in close to about 70, 80 medical setups like sub-centers and PHCs, where this is working perfectly fine. Even locations where there is no sunshine for 3 to 4 days, the system lasts and the power is there to be given to these institutions. So therefore, apart from that, there are many things happening. I don't think this is the right stage to talk about all of it. Our Chief Secretary has spoken some. I just gave you a hint about a few. And I'm sure during the course of discussion, you will hear much more, and then you will realize that how much Meghalaya is already doing in this line. But the challenge is so big that whatever we do is not going to be enough. So to conclude, again, I come back to my opening remarks. We have to accept the reality. We have to work towards changing the mindset. It doesn't happen in a day. We have to realize that ultimately livelihood is as important as the environment, and therefore we need to see both of these things together. We need to look at small things as well as big things, because there are small things that are, impacting houses like lifestyle, and but at the same time we have to look at the larger policy decisions that we take. So if we mix and balance all of this and have a healthy discussion, I hope that we will come out with some really good suggestions that could be then implemented in the days and the months and years to come. And as Chief Secretary has mentioned, let this not end with this two-day conference. Let there be a feedback and suggestions given to not just Meghalaya state, but to all the different states of the Northeast. I'm sure you'll discuss Northeast as a whole. And that's very important. And I hope you'll discuss Bangladesh also and Myanmar also, because they're right there. We cannot ignore it. We cannot deny it. It's all part of the same region. And hence, only geographical boundaries are segregating us. So I hope you discuss all of this, give suggestions, and as I was mentioning to Mr. Samir, that we are already planning to make this an annual affair, and we would like this center to become one of the most aggressive and dynamic centers where discussions take place, suggestions come in, and action is taken, to mitigate and obviously to adapt to the environmental challenges that we have. So a lot has been said. I apologize for speaking so long, but thank you so much for being so patient. And I wish this dialogue that we're going to have a great success. And I would also like to declare this particular dialogue in this conference as open. And once again, would like to welcome each and every one of you to our beautiful state of Meghalaya. Kublai Shibun, Matela, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Minister, sir, for giving us a comprehensive overview of the state of Meghalaya's relentless work towards making a green economy possible, particularly the central role played by community involvement. And in fact, true to the spirit of community involvement, we have present with us here at this dialogue many community members who are actively a part of the work on sustainability. I'd now like to call my colleague, Aparna Roy, who is an ORF fellow and ORF's climate change and energy lead, to give the vote of thanks.
Honorable Chief Minister of Meghalaya, Mr. Conrad Sangma, respected Mr. D.P. Walam, Chief Secretary, Government of Meghalaya, Madam Eenam Gambhir, Joint Secretary, G20, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, and Dr. Samir Saran, Chair, Think 20 Secretariat, Member, T20 Core Group, and President of the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you, esteemed panel, for the enlightening and thought-provoking perspectives that you shared with us today. India's G20 presidency has put great emphasis on green development with a specific focus on the need to reevaluate the relationship between humankind and nature and identify new frameworks which can help foster development and human well-being without compromising with the conservation goals. Natural capital is the most fundamental form of capital that has and is slated to determine the fate of human habitat, its developmental needs, and sustainability. And as was reflected in each of the opening interventions that we just heard, nature and the environment must increasingly be seen as powerful solution to some of the greatest development challenges and not just as an inexhaustible resource meant for exploitation. Nowhere is this better visible than in the state of Meghalaya, where we are gathered to discuss, deliberate, and learn how nature solves and explore a new framework for our sustainable future. Meghalaya, as the dignitaries highlighted, is an exemplar of climate action and has demonstrated its commitment towards climate resilience through a broad spectrum of adaptive measures. We believe that many of these are potential lighthouse initiatives and could be replicated in other parts of the world that are vulnerable to climate hazards and environmental risks. The inaugural session has set the tone and agenda for the next 2 days as we proceed to deliberate and deep dive on the possibility of scaling nature-based solutions to strengthen climate action, practicing climate-smart agriculture, reimagining global value chain to promote inclusive growth, mobilizing communities to transfer climate movement, exploring new financial options for biodiversity conservation, and working towards innovative green deals. It is only if we brainstorm, build consensus, and act together that we will be able to create a new framework for our sustainable future. Which is why a particularly special word of thanks to our partners and most gracious hosts, the State Government of Meghalaya and the Meghalaya Basin Management Agency for bringing us together. Thank you once again to all of you for your presence and participation and for traveling to the beautiful state of Meghalaya to share your insights with us.
Before we close the inaugural session, we'd like to play a short documentary on the Government of Meghalaya's groundbreaking work on payment for ecosystem services. And I'd also like to request the dignitaries present that after this documentary ends and before we break for tea, to please come up on stage so we can take a family picture. Thank you.
Meghalaya's forests are under threat. The degradation of natural forests and declining soil fertility is affecting hundreds of thousands of people depending on these forests for their basic resources. In many cases, the forests are owned by the communities, a unique character of Meghalaya. This relationship between communities and their forests forms the basis of the Green Meghalaya initiative.
Dear friends, this program that we have, which is called Payment for Ecosystem Services, we have an acronym called GREEN for it, the GREEN Project. And the idea really is that a lot of destruction has been done for forest covers in many parts of the country and the world as a whole. And Meghalaya State is today leading a very, very unique and a pioneering project where we are paying the landowners, mostly which are communities in our state, money to protect their forest and not to destroy it. And it is a preemptive measure which ensures that people are actually taking the initiative of not destroying, and in return the government of Meghalaya is giving them financial support. And this unique program is something that is going to be great for Meghalaya. We're getting good response, and I hope that we'll be able to see this program become successful in other parts of the country too. And we look forward to your participation also and your support in whatever small way possible to be part of this very, very unique program that will definitely send a very positive message for the climate change challenge that we're having today in this world.
Meet the Greenfield Associates, or GFAs, the foot soldiers of Green Meghalaya. Green Meghalaya is implemented under the Payment for Ecosystems model, or PES. It offers compensation to forest owners and forest-owning communities under some essential conditions and categories to preserve the forests.
Nistang ni kani ka scheme boycott ka pes kumno baki apply bat kai kijing mentai baki yo ladaki apply kani ka scheme.
Apart from exploring the most inaccessible corners of Meghalaya and providing valuable data, the GFAs interact with forest owners and users to address concerns, build trust, and bring more beneficiaries on board.
PS scheme gamsatanira tentang manca anjingni genggebba arum palwarang ungjani sel palang rakani sel kasna ni rang kumatna aru andege tentang siringrang cibiskrang doang jang jokmo ini bidengo anjingi rang khot tangai rakhina kata matna.
Equipped with the latest technology, the GFAs collect forest data including size, density, and presence of sacred groves.
Pengilek verify ben ilgi cloud Ihaban hiar pada kadai ka lumba ihaban hiar ki kilomat maldon kilomi kibun kiban kiriat tem te kilo ki caka bangi ihaban hiar telai kilo ki caka bangi kiuriat Ting sembun chinge.
Hakabangi let chikishnong ki bakam jangai kajenjal lada hakishnong ki bangi let tangka surak hukamdan.
The data that is collected allows the categorization of the forest and determines the financial compensation to be received. Since the launch of the program, more and more communities have gained confidence in Green Meghalaya and have signed up as beneficiaries.
Kamdon jing AAA ro nangi. Ngisupan biang kikot kisla. Bat nang tangi sosopet kini kikot kisla. Bat hadin nang ta ngilayo pat saya kapisa lapha sakabang account yongki.
The GFAs work closely with the Meghalaya Basin Management Agency, sharing their findings and collaborating to ensure the accuracy of the data, which forms the backbone of the payment process. Across the state, beneficiaries have embraced Green Meghalaya. The financial support received encourages and motivates them to continue being the guardians of the forests.
Yang kermen ba ngakan turu usigiwe kiramba sino. Dan itu gibre shimet berana kecika kabahe. Mendai bantiang dan mendai ban sungu ban ong kata jing sungu tak ham saya ban ong ba ka sarkar kan sesimno ya kan ka banda kala ai kita kilat jirap nam ta ka jimantoi mereka de ke jingnang ke jungi kumno ban penunkam bar ke de ta nam ta ka jimantoi nam ta ka sinong kata na kam ta ka ri ke jungi ru ba pli keleng ta cloud tam ta kimdon shu diang ki bahe.
Green Meghalaya was launched in June 2022 with an initial objective to cover at least 50,000 hectares. In less than a year, more than half of this goal has been achieved. Green Meghalaya's inclusive model and data-driven approach have marked Meghalaya as a conservation pioneer, an initiative designed to enable communities to build a sustainable future from the ground up.